I'm Charles Jenkins, Jessica Burbank with you guys. Listen, I'm looking forward to today's show. It's going to be a little bit bananas. Okay. Are we going to take stories to the bank?
We're going to take them to the bank.
Yes, we are. On top of that, got a couple of stories that I just absolutely love in today's show. One is about Brett Favre. You probably heard a little bit about that, but we have an excellent update on that. And then also a surprising source defines masculinity for us. I think you're going to enjoy that story. All right. But Jessica, take it away.
All right. The state of post-Roe America is going as expected. Let's share some details out of what is going on in Arizona. So on Friday, a judge lifted a decades-old injunction, which had blocked an anti-abortion rights law dating back to 1864, before Arizona was even established as a state and allowed the ban to be enforced. Pima County Superior Court Judge Kelly Johnson said in her ruling that Roe v. Wade, the 1973 U.S. Supreme Court ruling, which affirmed the constitutional right to abortion care, had been the basis for barring the 1864 law from being enforced. But since Roe was overturned in June, she said that the injunction should be annulled. Reporting from Common Dreams, Johnson's decision will unleash a near-total abortion ban in Arizona, said Planned Parenthood of Arizona, with the law including no exceptions for people whose pregnancies result from rape or incest. Under the law, anyone who helps a pregnant person obtain abortion care can be sentenced to up to 5 years in prison. The law does include an exemption for medical emergency, according to the New York Times, but as Common Dreams has reported, such an exemption in practice has already resulted in a Texas woman being forced to carry a non-viable pregnancy until her health was deemed sufficiently in danger before a doctor provided care. Governor Doug Ducey has said that the 15-week ban he signed in March would supersede the century-old ban. But Attorney General Mark Brnovich, a fellow Republican, has argued that the older ban should take precedence. Mr. Brnovich filed the motion to vacate the injunction from 1973. He went on to say, the Attorney General, Brnovich, I have and will continue to protect the most vulnerable Arizonans. Arizona remains one of the most pro-life states in the country. Reporting from the New York Times says women seeking abortions had already been traveling from Arizona to New Mexico, California, and Nevada amid the legal turmoil that erupted in Arizona after Roe was struck down. And providers say they anticipated those waves would now swell. So, Cenk, what do you make of this? This law is from 1864, and it's taking precedent over laws that were passed in March.
Yeah, well, okay, I have two different opinions, Jessica, depending on the issue. Okay, so because there are two different issues in this case. One is the law, and the other is policy. How do we feel about it? Legally, I don't think that they're wrong. I think that probably the 1864 law does apply, and it was reaffirmed in 1907, as we clarified, and it was codified. So, but now in this new post-Roe world, well, it's our job to defeat them. And so now the great majority of people in Arizona, as well as the rest of the country, are pro-choice. And they're very, very clear about that. But sad day, if right now the Republicans in Arizona say, oh, no, we love it. We want these barbaric laws that the people of Arizona do not want. Well, then in a functioning democracy, what happens next is you vote them out and you put in people who agree with you. But if you don't, you got no one to blame other than yourself in Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the voters in Arizona are pretty much in line with what you're saying. So there's a poll that's the Arizona Public Opinion Pulse. It's run by OH Predictive Insights. And according to the latest AZ-POP, so Arizona Public Opinion Pulse survey, 52% of registered voters in Arizona oppose the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade. So that's not a huge majority, but it is a majority. They've basically said, we agree with the overturning of Roe. when it comes to the Supreme Court. But when you pose the question a little bit differently, it suggests that maybe the folks that have been talking about states' rights so much actually got through. But it turns out the people within those states might be not on the side of the abortion ban. So the vast majority, 71% of voters in Arizona, oppose making abortion illegal. Voters either believe abortion should be legal and available, that's 39%, or that politicians should not be able to prevent someone from making that decision for themselves, that's the remaining 33%. It gets more interesting. So this polling was conducted by NARAL, and 9 in 10, so 90%, agree that each of us should have the freedom to decide how and when we start to grow a family, free from political interference. This includes every Democrat, 100%, along with 89% of independents and 82% of Republicans. 4/5, so that's 82%, agree that some kind of one-size-fits-all law won't work here. And people are making, personal medical decisions. Large majority of Democrats, so 91%, agree with this. 85% of independents, 74% of Republicans agree with this, as do 85% of white voters and 75% of Latinx voters. So this is super interesting, right? Because 52%, not a significant majority, saying they agree or they disagree with Roe being overturned. But a vast majority of people in Arizona believe this is a personal decision, right? If you're the Republican Party, you talk about personal liberties and freedoms quite a lot, and then you're legislating in the complete other direction. It turns out the majority of voters in Arizona are not so supportive of an abortion ban, which is exactly what they're getting, Cenk. So it goes back to what you're saying. If we really had a government that was buying for the people, it turns out Arizona wouldn't have this law in place.
Yeah, so this goes to further support what we've been saying on the show all along, which is, number one, politics is all about branding and framing. So number two, that is why corporate Democrats doing such a terrible job of branding is really material to your rights, right? And American media always branding and framing in favor of the right wing on economic issues, and oftentimes on social issues like this one, is also really harmful to the voters and to American government overall and politics. So let me explain a little bit further what I mean. Look, here's a situation where if you frame it as, hey, should you make decisions about your own body and your own family and how you plan your family, everybody agrees, including overwhelming majorities of Republicans, over 80%, right? Obviously, get the government off our bodies and our families and let us make the decisions. But if you say, hey, do you agree with the right-wing Supreme Court? Like a giant chunk of those Republicans go, I have been triggered. I got a Pavlovian word. I will now have a Pavlovian reaction. Tucker Carlson and all of right-wing media has convinced me that right-wing is positive. If Supreme Court goes right-wing, I love it. But it just took away the rights that you say you care a lot about and want. It does not matter. I am now activated. I will vote for whatever right-wingers tell me, right? And by the way, like I'm joking around about the tone, but that's actually literally what they do. And the polling just showed you that. If you say, hey, this is what it actually is, they go, oh, well, God, I mean, I want freedom. I want freedom. And I don't want my wife. I don't want anybody messing with her either. OK, they say, but the right wing says we should. God damn it, we should. You know, we should. It's the same poll. It's the same people. It's amazing. It's amazing. So that's why when the Democrats never fight against Republicans, it leaves all the framing to the Republicans. And that is why oftentimes people will vote against their own self-interest. Now, if you had a strong Democratic Party in Arizona, and you don't, you have the weakest possible one with Mark Kelly, Kyrsten Sinema, 2 out of the top 5 worst Democratic senators, constantly reinforcing Republican framing. In fact, Sinema did that today. It's later in the program on a different issue. Oh, the Republicans are right. The Republicans are right. Mitch McConnell's right. The Republicans are right about everything. Right? When you do that, well, then people think, oh, I guess the Republicans must be right. And so I'll give away my rights because I heard from both sides and the media that the Republicans were right. So here you are. In Arizona, if you're an actual voter and you're among the 71% who say, no, I definitely want abortion to be legal. Abortion. I'm not even general framing. You're like at 90%, right? But like specifically about abortion, 71%. If you're among that 71%, make sure you vote that way. There isn't a single Republican that agrees with that in politics. Republican politics, if you're voting for a Republican, you are voting to have your freedom taken away as a woman. That's just a flat out fact. If you found the unicorn, there's like a Republican somewhere hiding out in Pennsylvania and he's pro-choice. Okay, great. But otherwise, it's a fact that at the national level, if it's not 100%, it's 99% of Republicans who say, yes, we will definitely take your rights away. So vote like it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just sad that we're in this place in our politics where you have to get like a 3-word phrase right in order to win people over on an issue instead of just really substantively discussing the issue itself. So we've accepted the framing, unfortunately, for far too long that people who are against a woman's choice about abortion, for them to say that they're pro-life. Right? It's really hard to argue against someone when they're like, well, I'm pro-life, and because you disagree with me, you are not pro-life. By accepting their little slogan there, we've put ourselves in an awful position, because so often when a woman is pregnant and chooses to get an abortion, it is because her life or the child's life is in danger. We've seen so many cases where women have to travel to other states when they have unviable pregnancies, or they have to carry that baby to term, ultimately to give birth to a baby that is just going to have to be buried anyway. And it's a terribly sad situation. And if you are pro-life, really, maybe you wouldn't want situations like that playing out. It's a complicated issue, and that's precisely why it should be one made between a person and their doctor, not one made by politicians and the government. But this framing really tricked a lot of people, because as you can see, when we talk about the issue with the words that really more accurately describe what we're dealing with here, right, the freedom to make a personal decision about your family, suddenly the polling shows people are supportive. So it's like, what are the Democrats doing with all of their time when they could be coming up with a better phrase to use to describe the issue? We just needed a 3-word phrase. We could have called it like the Freedom for Family Choice Act, but instead we just accepted the framing of pro-life and pro-abortion. And now we're here, and it's really sad.
Yeah. Look, last thing, guys, is 7 years ago, if you told people, a reality show clown is going to be the president of the United States, the American Capitol is going to be attacked, and 40% of the country is going to think it was terrific that it was attacked. The former president is going to steal top secret documents about nuclear weapons, and 40% of the country is going to think that's fantastic that he did that. And abortion rights are going to be gone, and abortion is going to be illegal in Arizona. Everyone would have told you you're the craziest person they ever met. There's no way in the world that's going to happen. And all of that happened while Democratic leadership went nothing. Total, utter losers, okay? Joe Biden barely won. He won the popular vote by a lot, but the electoral count, he only won by 43,000 votes in 3 states. The Democratic Party is totally and utterly incompetent in fighting back. And you have to understand something, guys. Most people are not knee-deep in politics like we are or like you are, right? Most people don't know anything about politics. So that's why those 3 words framing on any given issue matters a lot, because they're just going to hear it. They're going to see the headline. They're going to hear it for a second, and they're going to make their decision based on that. But our idiot leadership doesn't understand anything about framing. They're like, oh, most Republicans are great and reasonable and wonderful. We found a tiny slice that are ultra MAGA. But other than that, you should vote for Republicans. That is not correct framing, you morons. Okay, and finally, you have to remember the right-wing voters know nothing. You have to speak very clearly to them. That's why, if you remember the Obamacare protests, I mean, like, look, that was so emblematic. Number one, they said, oh, I can't believe the banks got those giant bailouts. We're against the bailouts for the banks. Koch brothers pull up in buses and lead them to an anti-Obamacare rally. They don't even notice. They're like, oh, yeah, goddamn. No banks now. Banks are great now. Okay, goddamn government. And you remember the signs? They say, get your government hands off our Medicare. Medicare is a government program. They don't understand anything. You have to be super clear in your messaging. But the Democratic Party thinks it's impolite to do that because then some of their donors might get mad. We just lost our rights. Arizona is now the 14th state to make abortion illegal since Roe was overturned. Still, the Democratic reaction is one of complete indifference and incompetence. Get in the goddamn game already.
Yeah, and the people who are the fiercest advocates for taking away our right to abortion are often these like MAGA types, right? The theocratic fascists who are, Christians. They want a white nationalist country. Some of them are saying this completely plainly. Others are just describing the thing but rejecting the title. And we have the Democratic Party donating huge sums of money in Republican primary races to the most extreme MAGA candidates because they think they have a better shot against them in the general. That's what the Democratic Party is doing to fight. Instead of really thinking carefully about messaging, instead of organizing with people and knocking doors and having conversations about the issues to break through all of this propaganda that we just described people are being fed every single day, no. Instead, they're going to ensure that MAGA Republicans get on the ballot in November. And that's really concerning. Cenk just mentioned Kyrsten Sinema cozying up to Republicans instead of fighting them, playing on the same team. So let's watch this.
Despite our apparent differences, Senator McConnell and I have forged a friendship, one that is rooted in our commonalities, including our pragmatic approach to legislating, our respect for the Senate as an institution, our love for our home states, and a dogged determination on behalf of our constituents.
So that was a speech at the University of Louisville in Kentucky in the McConnell Center. Senator Kyrsten Sinema just really couldn't help but profess her love for the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell. And there's more where that came from. Let's watch.
In today's partisan Washington, it might shock some that a Democratic senator would consider the Republican leader of the Senate her friend. But back home in Arizona, we don't view life through a partisan lens. Arizonans understand that while we may not agree on every issue, we do share the same values.
Share the same values with Mr. Mitch McConnell? Same team. She ended up doubling down on her position to pretty much get as little done in Congress as possible, voicing her support for the filibuster. She said, "Not only am I committed to the 60-vote threshold, I have an incredibly unpopular view. I actually think we should restore the 60-vote threshold for areas in which it has been eliminated already. We should restore it." She laughed and then continued and said, "Not everybody likes that because it would be harder for us to confirm judges, and it would make it harder for us to confirm executive appointments in each administration. But I believe that if we did restore it, we would see more of that middle ground in all parts of our governance, which is what I believe our forefathers intended." She continued, "While it is frustrating as a member of the minority in the United States Senate, and equally as frustrating in the majority because you must have 60 votes to move forward, that frustration represents solely the short-term angst of not getting what you want. We shouldn't get everything we want in the moment because later, upon cooler reflection, you recognize that it has probably gone too far." What a shocking statement. Let's recall that her bestie here, Mr. Mitch McConnell, was the one who eliminated the Senate filibuster on Supreme Court nominees in 2017 when Trump was in office so that they could get Neil Gorsuch through after they vehemently blocked Merrick Garland. But before we discuss, let's just listen to Sinema's just analogy-ridden excuses for supporting the filibuster here. Let's watch this video.
The House passes legislation that represents the passions of the moment, and that's what it was designed to do when our forefathers created the House. They wanted a body that represented the passions of Americans at the moment. But they tend to be a little bit over-eager. So when Republicans are in control, they pass a little bit of crazy legislation. And when the Democrats are in control, they pass a little bit of crazy legislation. And the job of the Senate is to cool that passion. There's a saying that the House is the cup of hot tea, and the Senate is the saucer in which you cool that tea. The Senate was designed to be a place that moves slowly, to cool down those passions, to think more strategically and long-term about the legislation before us.
Okay, what she's saying in very different words is that there should be very rich people who wear suits, who have a ton of money in the stock market, who are going to govern on behalf of corporations, and maybe they're going to filter some stuff out that the people actually really want. We couldn't have radical things like actually having healthcare in the wealthiest country in the world and people being paid fair wages and having sick leave. No, all of that stuff is so incredibly radical. And it's been many, many years where people have wanted these things, where these have been popular ideas, and still nothing. So it's not like it's a spur of the moment thing for people to want healthcare and maternity leave, like Kyrsten Sinema would like to have us believe. So what she's saying here is just insane. She's advocating for something that's very short of democracy. And I think regardless of what she believes the forefathers intended, I think people would like a real democracy, maybe as a treat. I don't know.
Yeah. So let's break down all the lies. So first of all, she talked about what her and McConnell share, values. Well, in a sense, that's true, because the one thing they value is money, corruption, donors, rich people, corporations, period. Everything else is total, utter lies. The reason she's goes on this ridiculous talk of how she cares about the forefathers, I'm going to disprove that in a second too, and about the saucer and the hotness and the coolness of the House and the Senate, is because the mainstream media enables those kind of lies. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. The filibuster is okay. So first, let's talk about how it came about, and then let's talk about why it's preserved. It came about notice she said forefathers. She is implying the founding fathers, but she's not saying the founding fathers because the founding fathers didn't do the filibuster. She's trying to trick you into thinking that it's in the Constitution when it ain't in the Constitution. The forefathers that she's referring to are racist, vicious, slavery-loving senators in the past. That is just a fact. It's a literal fact about the filibuster. You could look it up anywhere. They brought it in and they made it a Senate rule, both the past and after slavery, mainly after slavery, to make sure that they could keep abusing and, by the way, murdering black people in the South. They used the filibuster to make sure that the anti-lynching laws didn't pass. It was literally pro-lynching forefathers that brought us the filibuster. Now, Kyrsten Sinema knows that. People in the media know that. But yet they still talk about, Kyrsten Sinema cares so much about our beloved forefathers. Okay, so what is the filibuster used for today? Why do they preserve it? Because it blocks every single economic proposal that is very popular with the American people and the Democratic Party claims to be in favor of. And a lot of times the Republican Party claimed to be in favor of, like higher wages. If there was no filibuster, that should pass, like a higher minimum wage should pass easily, right? There's paid family leave. We're going to talk about it later in the show. It polls at 80%. It would pass so easily, but it would cost corporations money. And so they need something like the filibuster. We wish we could pass it. But, we can't get 60 votes. What could we do? The saucer and the teapot. And then the media goes, yeah, totally. Saucer, teapot. Doesn't have anything to do with the donors. Don't look at the donors. Don't look at the donors. Why? The billions of dollars in donor money go to politicians who then spend it on mainstream media ads. So then all of a sudden, Kyrsten Sinema is a person who should be deeply respected. Now, if we had a real press in this country, they would explain that she has the same donors as Mitch McConnell. And she sold out her voters. When she first came into politics, she was so left-wing. She was considered a dyed-in-the-wool progressive. She's such a massive liar. She's the biggest liar in politics. At least Mitch McConnell, you know what the guy is. You know he's corrupt. And isn't that amazing that they take the same money, they're in favor of the same policies, but sometimes the press, not often, but sometimes will note, Mitch McConnell has taken a lot of money from corporations and rich people. Perhaps that might influence him. I mean, they tiptoe on it, tiptoe, okay, but maybe a little bit. But when it comes to Democrats, how dare you? Are you saying a Democratic senator that took the same money as a Republican senator and then did the same exact policy as a Republican senator are equally corrupt? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Kyrsten Sinema is 100% corrupt, not 99. She doesn't mean a word she says. She's just, that entire speech was, hey, donors, I will do anything for you. Anything. I will pleasure you more than Mitch McConnell, which will break every record. okay? And the press will not report it as corruption because they're part of the corruption. So right now, we just did a story. 71% of people in Arizona believe that abortion should be legal. But she says, well, we could have that in Arizona. All we would have to do is pass a national law. But in order to get past a national law, you would need to get rid of the filibuster. She goes, no, whoa. Cool off your passions, everybody. Oh, I guess you're passionate about women's rights and controlling your own body. No, we're going to have the Republicans win on every issue, every economic issue and every social issue. Then we're going to tell our own voters, cool your heels, okay? We're never going to do what you want because the money is more important to us. That's who Kyrsten Sinema is, a total, utter sellout. And if we had real reporters in this country, every one of them would tell you that.
Absolutely. And as if we needed it. But here's more evidence that Mitch McConnell and Kyrsten Sinema are on the absolute same beat. Because in response to Kyrsten Sinema showing McConnell so much love, he gave some love back. Let's watch this.
I've only known Kyrsten for 4 years, but she is, in my view, and I've told her this before, the most effective first-term senator I've seen in my time in the Senate. She is today what we have too few of in the Democratic Party, a genuine moderate and a deal maker.
Effective? His definition of effective is precisely what Cenk described. Someone who will sell out to corporations and block good legislation when it's trying to get passed, even and especially when it's popular among the public. And she got called out by an interesting character from her past. Her ex-boyfriend took to Twitter after this speech. Keith Olbermann, he had quite some words for her. When we dated in 2010 to 2011, Kyrsten was a legit progressive, far to my left. Now she's embraced the political industry, TM, where there is only process, not policy, and never people. Perfect solution. She can be the next host of Meet the Press. And it's hard to even believe that Kyrsten Sinema actually did used to cosplay as a progressive, as Cenk mentioned, but it's true. Sinema first encountered politics as a Green Party activist working for Ralph Nader. She spent the early 2000s agitating against wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. At the time, she condemned capitalism and likened political donations to bribery. She ran twice for local office as an independent and lost. Since her 2012 election to the U.S. House, the candidate who once railed against capitalism's almighty dollar has welcomed the contributions of industry groups and corporate political action committees. She's raised at least $3 million from CEOs, business executives, investors, lobbyists, and finance sector workers as of 2021, campaign finance records show, reporting from AP News. So, Kyrsten Sinema tried to win as an independent, tried to fight for the right thing. But as soon as she lost, she sold out. We really need people who are stronger on their values than that. I mean, if you really believe in your values, you're not going to tire if you lose local elections. But it's really sad that that's the reality for a lot of people. They see the corruption in our political system. They stand up for what's right. It's really difficult for someone running as a third party candidate to win. And a lot of people get so disillusioned that they're just like, well, might as well do whatever I can for myself. And it's a really sad situation. And I'm not making excuses for Sinema, but it is a sad reality.
Yeah. So I will agree with Mitch McConnell on one thing. So we break another record today. Kyrsten Sinema has been the most effective Republican senator in her first term. No one could help Republicans as much as Kyrsten Sinema did, because without her, they can't break the Democratic agenda. But with her in the Democratic camp, posing as a Democrat when in fact she's a Republican, she has been able to kill 85%, along with Joe Manchin, 85% of the Democratic agenda. Well, you can't get more effective than that. I mean, he's absolutely right. And that should be a warning sign. People should write like, oh, isn't that weird that the Republican leader is thanking a Democratic senator for being super effective in effectuating his agenda? But instead, the overwhelming majority of the press will write it as, oh, bravo, bipartisanship. We don't know why Democratic voters are so rascally and they want their own priorities and policies. Nobody cares about that. We have bipartisanship, corporate bipartisanship. McConnell and Sinema are great moderates. They want every once in a while they write an article explaining what a sellout she is, and her and McConnell will do anything for money. That APR article doesn't mention that, but it obliquely references the money. Well, like, wow, right? But then they'll go right back to calling her a moderate. No, she's not a moderate. They're all prostitutes for corporate donations, period. Doesn't have anything to do with sex, doesn't have anything to do with gender. It has to do with, hey, Mitch McConnell, Kyrsten Sinema, I will give you money to use your body to go press that button, voting no to the American people and yes to my corporate interests. They're like, yes, sir, right away, sir. God damn it, press, do your job. But they won't ever do it. And by the way, the forefathers, the founding fathers, the actual founding fathers, warned us about moneyed interests 1,000 times over. It was in the Federalist Papers. It's in everything they said. Watch out. They said they're going to try to buy the government. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why we have sellouts like her. And by the way, Oberman, two things wrong, one thing right about his tweet. He said, I mean, the things that are wrong. I mean, what a hilarious humble brag that was. Back when I was dating Kyrsten Sinema, Senator Sinema. All right, Oberman, get past it. Get past it. I got it, brother. When I say I'm Mr. Jamaica, I'm joking. It's not an actual, that's not an actual title. But he's like, oh, yeah, did I mention? Oh, no, right. And then secondly, he's like, oh, she's worried about process instead of policy. No, she's not. You're giving her way too much credit. She doesn't care about policy or process. All she cares about is cold, hard cash. You give her cash, she will give you the vote that you want, period. And it is not specific to just Sinema. 90% of our politicians, all the ones that take corporate PAC money, they're all the same. They're all servants and prostitutes for donors. That's a total and utter fact. But the press says, no, they have opinions. Opinions my ass. They agree on to the same thing because they get money from the same people. It's the corruption, stupid.
Yeah. So in summary, we've got, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, Kyrsten Sinema, a moderate whose vote is necessary to pass legislation. Frequently, she's got people in her office convincing her to vote one way or another on an issue because she takes this position as a moderate. But effectively, her job has been blocking legislation, taking a ton of money from corporations, as Mitch McConnell does. That's why they're so close. And we've got an American public that's really listening to narratives about populism, whether it's Fox News or whether it's Bernie Sanders. And obviously the Bernie Sanders brand of left-wing populism, where he's offering real solutions that will help working class people, is much better because he's accurately calling out where the corruption is coming from. We have a government that is run by corporations, but then you have the right-wing populism that's saying the government is the problem and all they really want to do is make life easier for oligarchs when they get into public office. And unfortunately, the public doesn't have the narratives that we give on TYT. What they have is mainstream media, which is why her ex-boyfriend Keith's joke that she should be on Meet the Press is so on point, because they're hiding this fundamental truth that we're not in a situation where the federal government has too much power and the will of the people isn't being realized. The problem is that corporations are running our country as a shadow government on their benefit and for profit on the backs of all of us.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Trump calls someone else fat. Hilarious. We'll be right back. All right, we're back on Young Turks. Cenk and Jessica with you guys, but also Victor Flores, who just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. We appreciate it. Everybody else, tyt.com/join is the way to join us and help put out the truth to the American people. Jessica, what's next?
More truth for the American people. All right. So Maggie Haberman is coming out with a book. And in this book, we find out that Donald Trump has been criticizing Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie for their weight. So we're going to get into why maybe Trump shouldn't be throwing stones in a glass house. But the upcoming book is called Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America. According to the book, Trump has made several disparaging remarks about Chris Christie and Ron DeSantis. But here's how Trump responded when Haberman asked him about Chris Christie. I was compared to Chris Christie? Why? I didn't know I had that big of a weight problem. Shocking response from Mr. Trump. Trump recently went after Chris Christie's weight after he gave an interview saying that Trump left the FBI no choice but to raid Mar-a-Lago. So with that criticism, he decided to respond with this photograph posted on Truth Social. Chris Christie at a Roy Rogers at 11 p.m. in the evening trying to console himself. Great. So I think maybe Donald Trump was just like so angry, he may have taken his plate of chicken nuggets and ketchup and thrown it against the wall again when he heard this about Chris Christie. So more comments about DeSantis. Haberman also wrote that she had learned of Trump using similar terms to describe DeSantis. She also recalled learning from sources that Trump had called DeSantis fat, phony, and whiny, while also taking credit for the latter clinching the governor's seat in 2018. Some people would say that there are other men you could describe with the adjectives fat, phony, and whiny. Let's watch.
They also gave me a defective mic. Did you notice that? No. My mic was defective within the room.
But I'm also approving new dishwashers that give you more water so you can actually wash and rinse your dishes without having to do it 10 times. It was like an ice skating rink. I said, General, there's no way I can make it down that ramp without falling on my ass, General. Turned out to be worse than anything. I would have been better off if I fell and slid down the damn ramp.
I am a whiner, and I'm a whiner, and I keep whining and whining until I win.
Yes, I'm a whiner, and I keep whining and whining until I win. And he's calling DeSantis fat, phony, and whiny. Cenk, what do you make?
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about fat, phony, and whiny. We just showed you a clip there with plenty of wine, right? But that's, I mean, what does Donald Trump do? 24/7. Whine. Hey, you the 2020 election, the massive dumpster coming out. I think so was the Kraken. I should have won. Okay. Oh my God. Letitia James is being racist against me. Everybody's against me. Oh, the deep state's against me. Oh, I would have done everything if it wasn't for the deep state. Whine. He's born spoiled little brat. His dad spoiled him his whole life. I mean, he wasn't bright to begin with, but on top, when you add the spoiled on top, he's just a whiny little bitch. That's his main description. Everybody knows, like, the biggest whining bitch in America is Donald Trump. Everyone knows that. So him going around going, can you believe someone else is whining? Why? You wanted a monopoly on whining, and that's why you're bitter about it? And phony, I mean, again, the poster child for phony. He had a fake university. He had a fake charity. He had 6 fake businesses. He had actually dozens of fake businesses, 6 that happened to have spectacular bankruptcies. Everything about him is fake. He had a reality show where he pretended to be a smart businessman. Nothing's more fake than that. He bankrupted literally every company he has ever run. His whole life is described by the word phony. Total, utter con man. And then fat. Look, guys, with Chris Christie, I joke around, and as a preface to it, I say, as a fellow overweight New Jerseyan, okay, you have to at least acknowledge what you look like. You're gonna Trump, with your gigantic gut, you're gonna talk about how other people are fat? At least have decency to be self-deprecating, to at least, I live in a glass, so something, anything, right? No, that idiot thinks he's good looking. We did it on the show before. He's like, oh, women find me attractive. You moron, they find your dad's money attractive. Your whole life you've been thinking that they found your fat, disgusting ass attractive? Even your own wife won't even hold your hand. She's grossed out by you. I'm grossed out by her marrying you for the money, but that's all that anybody's ever married you for. You fool. So go ahead, give us more fodder for this, because, I mean, that is as hilariously ironic statement as you will ever find.
Yeah, it's definitely projection, right? He's upset that Ron DeSantis is gaining political traction and is a formidable opponent if he runs in 2024. Trump's super insecure about this. And what does he do? He projects his own insecurities. And he's like, well, that guy's fat. It's like, what a substantive critique against your political opponent. Thank you.
Jessica, to your point, two things about that. First of all, I got 1,000 critiques of Ron DeSantis. Fat isn't one of them. I can't even tell if he's fat or not. But compared to Trump, he's like a twig. Trump is infinitely fatter than Ron DeSantis if we're having that absurd conversation. But you nailed it. What's actually happening here is the ultimate irony. Trump is whining about Ron DeSantis. I don't like him. He's now getting more popular. I don't want anybody to be more popular than me. He's fat. He's phony. He's whiny. In between, like, in between those sobs, he calls DeSantis whiny. Like, this guy, he's never looked in the mirror in his whole life. And this is what entitlement looks like. There's a lot of rich right-wingers in this country who are absolute hot messes. And because the whole government and media and everything else has been structured around their fat asses their whole life, they look in the mirror thinking, nailed it.
What if his supporters see this, right? And they look at Ron DeSantis and they're like, that's actually a pretty healthy guy. He might be alienating some of his base, but I also think he picks words like this because they're easily repeated, right? His base can say, oh, well, Ron DeSantis is fat, phony, and whiny, so we don't like him, because that's what we heard on Truth Social from Donald Trump, who we listen to all of the time. Oh, my God. It's just interesting how his base takes the information that he puts out. And I would like to believe that he's losing them a little bit, but time will tell.
No way. He's not losing them at all. Okay. I mean, look, to be fair, there's a new poll out, and it's among Republicans, it's tied as to whether he should run again. And he used to have a 20-point edge there. So for the purpose of accuracy, he is losing some internal support. When he's compared to Democrats, all the Republicans are still with him. They're like, oh my God, I would much rather vote for that racist, monster, sexist, liar, con man than any Democrat, because those are the others, and I don't like the others, right? But within internal polling within the Republican Party, yes, he's losing some support, because now people are going, hey, maybe Ron DeSantis can be just as hateful as Donald Trump. Maybe we don't need the man-child who just, I can't even hear him anymore because all he does is cry. But overall, Republican voters, there's no end to their self-delusion. If you ask Republican voters now if Donald Trump is fat or skinny, I guarantee you Trump voters and Republican voters overall would say that he was skinny and that he was a really good-looking guy who has a great physique and a great body, because they live on a different planet. Their minds have been 100% brainwashed. You go talk to a Republican, they'll be like, oh, yes, Trump is good-looking. He has such a good body. Okay, you can't talk to people who are in a cult, and it's his cult. All right, we got to take a break. We got to go. We got one more story for you guys, at least, that's really great. Come right back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Jessica with you guys, and also a whole new bunch of members from YouTube that hit that join button below. We love that, and you guys make this program possible, and we often quote you during the show because we do the show with our members. So T. Williams CA just joined, so did Kyle Winfrey, so did Rodney Fong. You guys are amazing. Thank you for doing that. Everybody else, tyt.com/join. Help us put this show together and make sure that America hears what reality is. All right, Jessica, what's the next story?
All right. Unfortunately, Matt Walsh has demonstrated the actual impact of spreading hatred on the internet. He posted on Twitter a few tweets this week about transgender healthcare that had some consequences. Let's look at this first tweet. He is promoting a podcast episode, and he says, "We investigated our local hospital's gender butchery clinic. Here's what we found, episode 1025. And he posts the link to the podcast. And then he says, "I provided video evidence that Vanderbilt, that's the hospital, is performing gender-affirming double mastectomies on minors, a fact beyond dispute. They are also giving chemical castration drugs and irreversible hormones to children, another fact beyond dispute and supported by documentation." Marjorie Taylor Greene jumped in with a pretty big tweet saying ESG and wokeness are killing the Democrats, but the left's trans kid agenda is the nail in their coffin. Parents will protect their children with their lives and will ditch a political party in a heartbeat when that party comes after their kids. Remember, Virginia. And so these actions, which were really just thumbs moving on a phone screen to post these tweets, had consequences. So reporting from Vice News, one day after notorious right-wing figure Matt Walsh tweeted about a Tennessee clinic that provides critical care for trans patients, the hospital removed several pages about that care from its site, an outcome that risks making it even more difficult for trans people to access health care. And shortly after Matt Walsh posted this tweet with a link, "I'm begging left-wingers to get another hobby besides castrating children." After this, the Vanderbilt Clinic for Transgender Health at Vanderbilt University website was taken down. A 404, "This page cannot be found" error in its place. A quote from Ari Drennan, "Many of these hospitals treat patients who live many hours away. It can be hard to find hospitals who provide good treatment options, so it's very important for information about procedures that are offered to be accessible, so potential patients who are considering those procedures and for whom those procedures are medically necessary." And it's important to say that it's not just Vanderbilt, it's other hospitals as well. This happened in Ohio this week. Akron Children's Hospital in Ohio removed information about trans care from its site, including information about healthcare providers shortly after being targeted. In-person support group meetings for trans youth were canceled at Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago because of security risks. So is this freedom? Is what the right is fighting for really worthwhile? I don't think so. They are hating on such a small population of people in the country. You know, people should be allowed to live their lives however they want to. That's their personal freedom of choice. And they're deciding to make our political discourse about people who make up 0.5% of the population. So here's a statistic from UCLA Williams Institute. Among U.S. adults, 0.5%, about 1.3 million adults identify as transgender. Among youth ages 13 to 17 in the U.S., 1.4%, so about 300,000 youth identify as transgender. And Matt is making this the whole body of his political discourse right now. Look at his Twitter header. This is his profile on Twitter. His background is, "What is a woman?" And if you look at his bio, he identifies as a theocratic fascist. That is an accurate description of who he is as a person. Cenk, what do you make of Mr. Walsh?
Okay, look, guys, get a sense of how terrible a human being he is. So he said the same thing about Boston Children's Hospital. Almost everything he says is a lie. And so when he says it's a fact, by the way, these hospitals, can you please fight back? I get it. You guys are not in politics, and you probably watch mainstream media, so you probably think the right wing is, the same as the left wing. I can't tell the difference. No. They're coming for you. They do these insane things. If you keep cowering and you keep running from them, they're going to be further enabled. If he says something is a fact about you and your hospital, and it is not a fact, you should sue him. That's how it works. And instead, when you run, it enables him. It encourages him. For God's sake, look at what they did to Alex Jones by suing him. Because in a court of law, you have to present facts. Look at what's happening to Donald Trump in a court of law. He lost 60 cases in a row on the elections because he didn't have any goddamn evidence. And now he's like, I want a special master. And he has to go into court. And he's like, I don't know what I'm saying. oh, do I need evidence here? Looks like an idiot, right? Matt Walsh gets to say all these things because nobody ever pushes back. So now, but of course you do that legally, right? Rhetorically. But Matt Walsh sees that people are doing it not rhetorically. Last time he targeted the Boston Children's Hospital, there was a bomb threat, and people were scared to death of the nurses, the doctors, et cetera, but also the kids. They might have had to take the kids out of the hospital. It endangers the kids' lives when you do things like that. And why did the person call in a bomb threat? Why was there nonstop death threats? And now Vanderbilt's getting those same threats. Why? Because Matt Walsh literally said that's the hospital, and they're chopping up kids, they're mutilating them, and all this hyperbole that he uses. And we just read you the hyperbole, so you know what it is as verbatim what Jessica read, right? Then he sees, oh, that led to a bomb threat, that led to potential violence, that led to death threats. And then he does it again. See, that's the part where it's not, hey, man, I didn't know they were going to do that. It could happen. It could be one guy. And, you can't control everybody. Maybe it's even 2 or 3 guys and you can't control. But like dozens of people do the death threats, etc. And then you think, oh, that was good. And they got a bomb threat and they were all scared for their lives. He doesn't think, oh, maybe I should reconsider that tactic. That seems to be getting a result I don't want, which is threats of physical violence. No, he thinks that's a tactic that worked. It got me attention. First of all, who cares about anybody's life or safety? I'm going to go make some cash, okay? And then on top of that, oh, it made them feel scared for their lives. Excellent. Let's do that lie over and over and over and over again and endanger all those kids. And look at Marjorie Taylor Greene's lie. She's like, oh, they're coming after your kids. Who's they? And what do you mean they're coming after the kids? Everyone that goes to these hospitals, there is no operation allowed in America for under 18-year-olds to change your gender. There's the genital operations they're talking about is for under 18-year-olds. It's a lie. It's an unmitigated lie. It does not exist. The right wing is enabled by our awful, awful press to lie nonstop because there's no consequences. No matter what happens, the press calls everything 50-50, and when they see a right winger, they get down on their knees and kiss their ass. Call people what they are. He's a grotesque liar trying to obviously foment violence. He sees the violence and he goes, good, again and again and again. God damn it, somebody's got to fight back politically, legally, and rhetorically. And so he's putting people's lives in danger. And what are they? Their response is take the information down. Perfectly legal, helpful information. Stop running from these bastards. And for God's sake, somebody fight back.
Yeah, I would offer that the reason the hospitals did not fight back is because when you're running a hospital with a profit motive, your number one concern is bringing in as many patients as possible. Security risks are a threat to that. And also having people show up protesting at the hospital is a threat to that. If you actually cared about the patients and giving them good treatment, you maybe would have taken this more seriously and fought back against Matt Walsh. Maybe you would have sued. Maybe you would have released a statement defending the patients you treat there that are transgender. But I think the reason we see the right focusing so much on transgender issues, despite these folks making such a small proportion of the population, their decision to be transgender doesn't hurt anyone else at all. And if we believe in personal freedom of choice, they should be able to live their lives however they choose, even if you really would choose to live your life differently and wouldn't be happy if you were in their shoes. You're not in their shoes. You can live your life however you want. That's what freedom is. And because they are so focused on traditional Christian values and having a Christian state, they're making this a much bigger issue. But think about how people are living every day in America. People are struggling to pay bills. They're struggling to afford rent. Matt Walsh is not having conversations about the issues that affect people's everyday lives, and he's instead talking about this. I think there's also one last thing at play here, not to psychoanalyze Matt Walsh, but I think it's necessary. I think guys like this get so much of their value from the patriarchy, right? Matt Walsh isn't an exceptional individual, right? He's a white guy. He's had a lot of privilege and a lot of success, and he gets so much of his personal value from just, being this white guy who talks into a camera. And so the idea of deconstructing gender norms jeopardizes his position of privilege. He gets a lot of value from being a traditional man. And so if gender's not real, who am I as Matt Walsh. I think that's really the reason these folks are so reactionary about transgender issues. It is because they are weak. It is not because transgender people are a problem for living their life however they see fit.
Yeah, last couple of things here. First, to finish the thought about Marjorie Taylor Greene, she made it seem like they were kidnapping kids and forcing them into therapy or these treatments or whatever. That's nonsense. Every person that goes to that hospital is accompanied by their parents, and their parents have made that decision. It's the right wing that's coming in and saying, parents, we hate you. We don't trust you. We don't think you should get to make the decisions. We think big government should make those personal family decisions for you guys. Now, that's a fact. They don't say to anybody, Vanderbilt, Boston, all these other hospitals, it's not like they're going around going, hey, there's a kid right there in the park. Let's go snatch him up without asking their parents and do these surgery. What? That's what they make it seem like. Oh, they're coming after your kids. No, every single parent that has gone to those hospitals for any kind of help, not the surgery, for any kind of help, has voluntarily gone to the hospital. They're asking them, can you please help me and my kids? But they make it seem like it's the opposite. They're just unbelievable liars. But last thing is that there's now a cottage industry that profits off of hate. And Matt Walsh is one of its participants. So they see that hate is a product. And the more hate they put into the world, the more they get paid. And so they think, oh, this is working out really nicely. Oh, people are going to get hurt, bomb threats, etc. Who cares? I'm making money here. Look, a lot of people get hurt from profit industries. The oil companies are totally destroying the planet. The tobacco companies kill you for a living. And we can go on and on. The drug companies, they'll charge you so much you can't afford it, and then you'll die without their drugs. So here, let me have my little piece of the pie here. I just create hate. I put it out in the world. The mainstream media schmucks don't even fight back. The Democrats don't fight back. And I make tons of money from giving some people what they want. And a lot of right-wingers do want it. They want that hate. That's why they pay Matt Walsh to get that hate. So that's who they are. They're the immoral party in this country, the Republicans. The right wing is significantly more immoral than the rest of us. And so when they see someone selling hate, they're like, can't wait to buy more of it. And that's why the Matt Walshes and the Daily Wires and all the right-wing media outlets are successful, because that's what they're selling. Unfortunately, there's a big market for it.
Yeah, it's like when Donald Trump ran in 2016, we really saw demagoguery take hold. He weaponized people's hatred, or really weaponized their fear about what they were going through in the country, about cultural changes, their fear about economic instability, and turned that fear into hatred. And now he's created this beast that needs to be fed hate constantly. And we're in this race, this arms race of who can weaponize that hatred more, who can get more people to listen to their hatred and turn it into action or votes. It's the same thing that's going on between the disputes between DeSantis and Donald Trump. And it's exactly why we see DeSantis becoming more and more far right. It's because it's this who can out-hate each other. That's what politics has become in our country. And then we have the Democrats, which are doing near nothing to fight the uprise of fascism in the country. And we really need a popular movement of people who are rejecting both of these views. But unfortunately, we have a lack of leadership in American politics right now because it's been run by corporations for corporations for all too long. And we're lucky to have leaders like Bernie Sanders. And I think that's why so many people are worried about 2024, because we know we can't run Joe Biden again against this. Unfortunately, the hate factory is running all too strong. And they've got people in the media like Matt Walsh fighting for them. And then the Democrats have what? MSNBC and Meet the Press. Great.
Yeah. All right. We got to go. Everybody check out Jessica on Rebel Headquarters, where she makes fantastic videos. And when we come back, the Brett Favre story. Can't wait to weigh in on this and more devastating details about what a crook he is, which makes sense because he's a right winger. They're almost all crooks. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.